Yes, good morning. My name is Jay Henry. Yes, my name is Jay Henry. I'm with the LBA Audit Division. You had sent, the chair had sent a letter to OPLC and I think it was 5 boards who were part of the audit of the mental health workforce audit. In your packet, you'll see the response from OPLC and the directors here, I think to present the status, and if you have any questions, you can address it to her.
That would be wonderful. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning. Just for the record, my name is Dee Juris, Executive Director at OPLC, and appreciate you all being here in the morning. I know some of you had quite a late night. I think you all had a busy day yesterday, so appreciate that. So I'm happy to discuss. We did provide an update on all of the 12 audit findings, point by point here, and then you can see on the first page there's kind of a table just to give you a sense of where it is in terms of resolution. So I'm happy to walk through that or just take questions, whatever your preference is. And I'm also happy to address the kind of the agency's plan moving forward to provide you updates on the rest of the audits that you have before you. So whatever you'd like to do.
I think what we'd like you to do is go through it item by item. And if there's questions, we'll ask them as each item comes up rather than wait till the end.
All right, sounds great. So just give you a broad overview. We do have the vast majority, that 10 of the 12 are in the substantially resolved section. The first one we would consider fully resolved. And then down here, number 11, you can see partially resolved. So I'll just walk through. Again, feel free to stop me with questions. Some of this language is repeated because a lot of the findings they're interrelated. A lot of them have to do with the office just promulgating rules. Just as a general statement, I will to set the context, the rulemaking process when you introduce a board into the timelines between 541A and then the board process and the drafting is about 13 months from when we start to when it is actually the final proposal is adopted based on meetings, public comment periods, the drafting, all of those pieces, FIS requests. So you can imagine the dynamic within the office as the governing statute the legislature has made a lot of changes to what used to be 310A is now 310. As those changes, we have to make adjustments with all 57 boards, and we have a few other professions. I believe we're up to 61 different professions we regulate, and it requires changes generally across all of those. So if you can imagine in a 12-month calendar year where we get bills that come out in June, we begin our process when they're effective. We have to prioritize the office. If you've read through the report, you'll see as we go through, I have 1 full-time and 2 part-time rules drafters. We do about 25% of the state's rulemaking. And again, on that 13-month timeline, so the legislature passes the laws, we start getting to work. Even if we're right on top of it and we could draft everything the day that it's passed, we're already past the time the next bills are coming out to make those changes. So we've been in, I would call, a little bit of a riptide of legislative changes. We implement the rules. It takes us a few months to get through all of that with the current staffing. Then they change. We're changing midstream, trying to prioritize those legislative changes again. So just to set the table, that's kind of the landscape that we're navigating here. So a lot of what you're going to see in this report is the substantially resolved means we're in the middle of rulemaking. Boards are at some stage within that process as we've been trying to prioritize finding these legislative changes, but then also within those which are the higher priority. So observation number 1 about license portability was a very clear priority for the prior gubernatorial administration and for both bodies of the legislature. It's not surprising to me that that's the first observation on this audit, and it also received the highest priority within the office, that statutory mandate on the idea of the kind of the public policy term is reciprocity. We use the term endorsement because just Reciprocity implies that it goes both ways, but we can't obligate another state to recognize our credentials, so it's the endorsement in. So in 2023, the legislature passed amended RSA 31017 to have the universal recognition. So a license in good standing from another state that's substantially similar, a person can provide evidence of that and then be licensed in New Hampshire. That required rulemaking for not just for every board, but every profession within that board, which is over 200 of them that review to determine what is substantially similar. And it also obligates the office to regularly update that because as I mentioned, our regs are constantly changing and other states are as well. So there's a fairly consistent review because at any time, Maryland could be on the list for one profession, those regs could have changed and then it could not be anymore. So we're working on standardizing that review to make sure we're as up to date as possible. But because again, this is a newer, we've only been doing this reciprocity in terms, after the rules were adopted for just over a year. So that's the status there. I'm happy to talk about that if there's any questions. I know there was a lot of conversation 2 years ago about that.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Senator Burrow, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in, Director. So when, I know that must be an arduous task to look at every single state and understand what they are, what their rules are. Do you review that so that you're prepared for whatever license comes in, or do you sort of do it on a case-by-case basis where someone may come in with a request from Arkansas for a cosmetology license or something? I'll pick one.
Yeah.
And, I mean, do you try to review all of those license areas? I know you have 50-plus boards that are under your purview, and I just was curious what your process was for doing that.
So at the outset, when the legislature passed that law, I believe it was House Bill 594, if memory serves the number
I
there.
think it was 96, but that's all right.
Okay, we're close. Either way, it was every state, every profession all at once, which is a monumental task, quite frankly. It was enormous to get into. So it's the PLC, which is the office rules, is the 313s or our 313s. That's our endorsement reciprocity section. So every profession is listed there. So that was an all at once everything. What we're working on now is trying to establish, and again, we're not fully there yet, a standard timeline. Is it annually? Is it biannually to review any changes? I think at the risk of opening a can of worms, there might be some opportunity for AI to assist in the going out and finding information in terms of the collection and then verifying that to say, were there changes made? Again, I'm not going to have AI actually verifying it, but just doing the actual research and compiling the information. I think the state is doing some really interesting work in that space, and I'd be interested in exploring if that might be helpful for the workforce for the ongoing piece. The other thing that we've implemented is, so if an individual application comes in from a jurisdiction we've not predetermined in rule, we will do the analysis based on that individual. If it goes to a hearing, if there's a review with the board, right, if the board is needed for expertise, we are also now tracking those so that we don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel. So actually just this week, Heather Kelly is my director of operations. She'll correct me. 8 or 10 different jurisdictions, we did a full review and added those to the website to be like, yep, now our staff know and the public knows, good to go. These ones, we've done the legal analysis. It's similar. If another manicurist from this jurisdiction comes, we can approve it.
Fantastic. May I follow up?
Yes.
What do you think your average turnaround time is? By the way, thank you for your work on this. I know it's been a lot, and we had a lot of debate and a lot of work on that bill as we were pushing it through. But what do you think the average turnaround time is if someone comes in with an application and says, I'm from this state and I'd like to get my license here in New Hampshire, using the reciprocity?
So if it's a complete application, right, there's always some variability. If it's back and forth, they've missed something. If it's a complete application with the universal application and the license is actually in good standing, many of them are issued in the same day.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you.
There are other questions, Senator Lane?
So I know we're still dealing with the universal app. I think we'll have it in jail card this month.
On the 20th, I'll see you there.
Yeah, so we'll have that universal app and approve the universal app. But my question is, particularly in this finding, we were brought a lot of stuff in regarding mental health services, specifically because of what's going on in the state. And this observation, and while well, in theory, improved license portability can deal with, electricians and plumbers and all the other things. This one specifically talks about, again, mental health practice, licensed now another drug professionals, medicine, nursing, and psychologists. So I'm interested in whether we're prioritizing, again, what the finding was here relative to mental health over, again, plumbers, electricians, all the other boards that still need this service. But in this particular audit, it was particularly focused in this area, and the finding is focused in the area of mental health. So are we going to be able to prioritize these 4 or 5 boards that are on here to be able to get to a faster resolution so we can check this thing off as saying done?
So this is the only one that is done. This one is done.
This one's,
This finding, observation 1, portability is completely done.
Perfect.
So that is complete. I am, pardon me, I'm not being rude. I don't have my computer in front of me. I was going to try to pull up quickly the list for these specific boards that are listed, how many qualifying jurisdictions we have found, just to get you a sense. So if you'll just permit me a minute, I can pull that up for you. One of the challenges within the mental health profession, and LADAC is another one, there's been conversations. I know the legislature has considered compacts in a number of different areas. There's been some conversation about a LADAC compact. One of the challenges is the regs are very widely across all 50 states. There's not a lot of even regional similarity, whereas, and this is not a slight at any profession or by comparing. Just an example is the Board of Nursing. The regs are very, very similar. There's a compact that the vast majority of U.S. states are in, and the reciprocity, all 50 states and U.S. territories are good for the Board of Nursing. If you have a license in another state, you can come to New Hampshire, no questions asked. These other professions are, it's just not the same landscape. So I'm just trying to get to you to give you a sense. Yeah, so it might be for the master LADAC, you've maybe got a dozen states that are substantially similar.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Maybe about a dozen states. I don't want to sit here and count in front of you. It is available on my website, but you'll see there are other ones that it just says, like for an architect, all U.S. states and the District of Columbia qualify, no questions asked. That is not the case for some of these. So we've done the assessment, but yep.
Representative Weber?
Thank you for, I didn't realize quite the scope of the task that we had passed on. I thought I heard earlier that you were still in the process of evaluating some jurisdictions, but then you said that this one was complete. So, could you just fix my confusion? Because I thought what I was hearing was that quite a lot of it's done, but sometimes somebody comes in and they have license X for state Y, and you just go look at that state and make a determination based on that, which then becomes part of your database. So you have, the idea of the 200 times 50 plus whatever the
Yes.
is kind of daunting.
Yes, I'm happy to clear that up. So there were some where it was just there is no substantial equivalent. It's so specific that we, or it was going to be a much longer conversation and we needed rules to be out so we could start taking these applications for the ones where it's simpler. A good example of that is in the real estate field. It is very New Hampshire specific, right? The New Hampshire laws and rules. So there's been so that is one of the components of that. Another piece is, when I say a different jurisdiction, there are some states, the state of New York licenses electricians by county, I believe, or maybe even by city. So again, then it's like the state of New York doesn't have any regs. So when we looked at it, we're like, okay, well, New York's not good, but this specific county, if we can get to find them, which we, the office does some work, we can put that specific county or even city on the list. I believe the city of Rochester is one that we were looking into specific to the electricians. Another example is foreign countries. So like the country of Colombia. was one that we were looking into a few weeks back. So we didn't go to every jurisdiction on the earth that has any licensing regs, right? So we started with the 50 states. And so it's more of those kind of one-offs, whether it's a county or a different level or another country.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you again for the amount of work that went into that.
Any other questions? I guess we can go on to the next item.
Okay. That is the biggest one, I would say. I'll try to be more brief in the other ones. I don't want to keep you here for 4 hours today. Although I could talk licensing all day, we'll say that. Improving expedited licensure process. So there was a task about higher licensing risk, board input when necessary, expedited applications, basically saying we don't want these sitting for months, even a month at a time for processing, if there's any way that we can move them through more quickly. So many changes have happened. So the reciprocity is one piece for them to be expedited, but another piece is that now the office is the entity that is responsible for the issuance or the denial of a license. So the board set the criteria based on their subject matter expertise, but the office is the one that does the review. So prior to 2023, what was happening is a board would have to look at the application, every application. Most boards meet monthly, some meet quarterly. So if you had a board that met quarterly and you submitted an application the day after their quarterly meeting, you were waiting 3 months to even be reviewed. And that's the system. There's no judgment, right? There's nobody's fault. It's just the way that it was built. So now it's much more streamlined. So those higher risk applications, the process has really evolved for all applications, including those that need to be expedited. So again, the reciprocity allows for that to be very quick because of the expedited process where, hey, I've got a license here, we've determined it's substantially similar, good to go, rather than the full list of initial licensure requirements for a regular app. But even those are being processed much more quickly just in terms of that timeline. One of the biggest, sticking point is not quite the right word, but one of the delays that can be caused is waiting for a criminal record check or FBI fingerprints to be processed. And that is complicated because it involves the feds, it involves the Department of Safety, who are extremely fast at turning these around. It's not just for these licenses that they're doing those records checks. And that office is extremely efficient. They've done a lot of really good work to streamline their process and make sure they're moving through quickly. But even before it gets to the Department of Safety, the statute currently requires that licensees submit the release to my office, and then I send it to the Department of Safety and say, here's, this person filled out a release, you can release it to me. And there's a lot of back and forth in that process. So if they fill it out incorrectly, my staff send it to Safety. Safety says, hey, this is wrong. Then we send it back to the licensee, sends it back to City, right? So there's a lot of potential log jams in that process. In addition to just waiting for the actual fingerprints to come back, that information, those are paper. So we're expediting them where we can, but that is just something that causes delay, and you can only do it so soon. So that seems like I might have some questions on that.
Representative Eric?
I have 2 questions, if that's okay. So the easy question is, did I understand you say that the boards used to have to review every application, but that's no longer the case? Now you just review them yourselves once the rules have been set up?
Yes. So the current scheme is that the office is responsible for examination and review, issuance or denial based on objective criteria established by the board. Yep.
Okay, the more difficult one. What you just talked about with the Department of Safety is interesting to me because I've been dealing with another issue with this whole back and forth thing. I think this is a big problem with the Department of Safety. And if there's anything that you all can give us some insight into how we can help there, because I run into this with one of my constituents unrelated to OPLC, has related to the courts. But it's the same sort of thing where the Department of Safety says, oh, no, that's blah, blah, blah. We can't do that. You've got to go through this. And then they go over there and they say, well, no, you got to go through this. So is there some way to correct this problem? Can we do something legislatively to help the Department of Safety, or you be more successful and expedite that? Because this seems like a real problem in the state generally.
Yeah, I would not like to characterize it as a Department of Safety problem, not just because it's another agency, but I think it's the back and forth of the system more than specific to safety. And it's not a resistance on their part to doing the work. Like I said, if they have a complete release, they're turning them around, most of them the same day. The challenge is that there's a lot of federal involvement with this piece. My entire office has to do annual training with the feds to be able to, so that we can process this, that we're eligible. Every statute, Senator Pearl is well acquainted. Anything that has to do with these background checks has to be reviewed and approved by the FBI. That process can take unknown amounts of time. But one of the challenges, I've had a few conversations about, do I really need to be in between a potential licensee and the release, right? Can they submit the release that says send it to me, but can it go right to the Department of Safety and take me out of it? That is currently in statute, so I can't do that currently. But then the reticence is, if I change the statute again, then we have to go back through the FBI approval process again. If they don't approve the statute, then I cannot receive them. So then I can't see them. And then we're either holding up issuing licenses that require this background check, or I'm issuing them and waiving the requirement for the background check. So that's a difficult situation.
Follow? Can I follow up first?
Can I add just
Yeah,
a
go
little
ahead.
bit to what so we've been working on legislation, and I've worked with the director, because this is an issue that's beyond just OPLC. It also is, DES is having the same issue. And we've been working on language, on my third iteration now of doing background checks for solid waste facility owners. And I think the model language we have now is going to work. The issue has been with the FBI accepting the request from our New Hampshire Department of Safety. And we get the Department of the DOJ and the AG's office involved this time. And I believe the language we have now, according to FBI, will be acceptable.
So do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so that's great to hear. But the problem you just mentioned was one of the things you mentioned was the application was not complete. And this is what I've run into. How is it that the application isn't clear enough, which has been the problem I've run into, that the applicant is unable to fill it out properly? It's crazy that an application would come in, you couldn't detect that it was incomplete, and you pass it on to the Department of Safety, and they come back and say it's incomplete. This is what I've encountered.
Yeah, I don't think, Heather can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we review them for completeness. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to do that. We are just a pass-through to the department. We don't know what the requirements are that they're trying to establish. And it's, I don't know, it's things like somebody doesn't fill out the profession that they are a member, like the board that they're applying for a license under. I don't know if it's a form issue or if it's just user error, which happens with any of us filling out forms. So I don't know if it's an issue there. But again, all of these, the Department of Safety is working on federal regs. So I would hesitate to say that it's a safety issue or a safety form problem. I think it's complex and there's a lot of moving parts.
Okay, fair
We're
enough.
frustrated.
But
Yeah.
I would suggest that if you're working with them, it is a safety problem, at least in some of the cases that I've encountered. So it's something to look into.
Senator Lane?
You mentioned it was a statutory problem. Again, this sounds like a process issue, a procedural issue
Yeah.
about being able to get that, and whether, I know when I was coaching for the middle school, I had to do my query check, but the school just handed me my form, and there was a number on to call safety to schedule. I had to fill out the form and call safety and schedule it, and then safety, and on checkbox it, there was an authorization to release the information back to the school. So it was all my responsibility to call safety. I went down, got my fingerprints, and then I had already signed the waivers for safety when I was there to send it back to the school to say I was clear. By the way, I was able to coach. But again, is this the kind of process we need to fix? So there's not like they're giving you the form for safety and you send it to safety and then they try to schedule. Is there a way of streamlining? Is it a statutory problem that we can fix to allow the applicant just to take the safety form and go straight to safety and schedule the thing and then have them, again, on that same form, have the release for OPLC or DES maybe even, so that it's, again, the applicant going directly to safety and getting the agency out of the middle of back and forth and trying to coordinate.
I would love that. It is statutory. I'm trying to find the reference for you. I may have to get back to you on that
Actually,
specific
get back to
reference,
Senator
but.
Pearl, 'cause he's gonna.
I did, at one point, my staff were explaining to me, because it's very challenging, and they're like, we have to do this, and then they fill it out wrong, and then we have to go back, and sometimes they haven't even filled out an application, they've just done the fingerprints, so we don't even have a record of who it is, so then we have to chase them down, and I'm like, gosh, what if we didn't do any of that? And then I did that crazy thing, which is read the law, and so here we are. Yeah, so I will find that reference for you.
Representative,
So you're okay with that, to have that, to get out of that mix of taking the application and forwarding it to safety and going back with the back and forth, then trying to get back to the applicant because something wasn't signed properly or done properly? You'd be completely happy to get out of the middle of that.
The fewer people that touch it, the better, right?
Perfect.
So I'll get you that reference.
Representative Evil.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to join you all today. I wanted to ask you, do you have a problem when determining that an applicant's license is in good standing in the state where they're coming from, if that's the term?
No, I don't, because if they have an active license, then they're in good standing. If they don't, then they're
Oh, I
then they're
see.
not.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you for asking, though. Thankfully, there's not that many variables in that one.
Representative Rosenwald.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Senator
That's
Rosenwald.
okay. Are you able to determine whether they're pending disciplinary actions from another jurisdiction? I mean, they may be licensed, but there could be something pending.
That information is collected in our universal application
Okay,
that they
thank
have
you.
to fill out. Yep.
There's no other questions, and then we'll move to item 3.
Thank you. So temporary licensure laws and practice. So this is really a finding for you all to consider clarifying 31065. There is some legislation, I believe it has passed both houses in HB 82, which is eliminating some of the confusion of the temporary licenses in different places. The Board of Nursing still maintains its own specific temporary license because it's a slightly different situation. So we're coordinating with boards to eliminate rules that would no longer comply with current law, including the temporary licenses. So this is again the kind of the landscape that I was talking about earlier is when laws change, we have to adjust the rules, which means sometimes adding rules, but it also often means getting rid of them or changing them. So we're in the middle of that process of saying, okay, which boards have temporary licenses in their rules that it's no longer in statute, that they have their own special temp license, because the office has the ability to grant temporary licenses for a short duration of time to streamline that. And it's confusing for applicants too, right? Do I get the OPLC temp? Do I get this one that says my board specific? When do I look at that? So we're in the middle of that process presently. Happy to get you a lot more details to follow up in writing. I don't know that you want that, but I'm happy to if that's interesting to you all.
Any other questions on item 3? I guess we'll move forward.
All right. So observation 4 is developing rules for military-related applications. That is RSA 31017 requires that all boards, the OPLC in consultation with boards, right? So we have to facilitate licensure. We have some fee waiver requirements, and then also they have to establish basically the 313s, our reciprocity piece, but for every MOS within the military specialty, how the training and the experience for that crosswalks with the regs for the license types. So that's another quite expansive project. We, again, 1 full-time, 2 part-time employees are meeting with the boards saying, hey, we have this statutory obligation. How can we support you? Let's look at these pieces board by board. And discussing that with them. Yes, so we're in the middle of rulemaking with a number of boards on that. I know, I'll give a shout out to the cosmetology board. Each board member has taken a set of, a branch actually of the military to comb through to say, are there any that would crosswalk that we should compare with our professions that we regulate. So many boards are doing that work, but that's the one most recently I've been aware of, that each individual board member is committed to doing that review. So that's what we're looking at there.
Seeing no questions, we'll move on.
Great. All right, so observation 5, ensuring board rules for acting on applications aligned with state laws. Same thing, we're working on it. We're in the middle. They change every year, and we don't always get the rules through every year, so that's where we are, but we're working on it. Mercifully and thankfully, when I took this position this fall, one of the conversations I had with many of you at this table actually was, give us a year to try to catch up on these rules. There's been so many changes over the last 3 sessions. Let's really actually get it set here in rules, let the process play out, because again, right, you've got statutes, then we write rules, then we have to draft policies for staff to implement those. So we're barely touching the policies. We're just starting to get to some of those. So again, we're mid-progress on that to make sure that it aligns with the current law.
I think it's becoming pretty clear to the board that you really have your hands full. You have a lot of work ahead of you.
Yes,
You've
sir.
made some accomplishments.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I think what are we on, item 7 at this point?
Yeah, so I will touch 6 very briefly, measure timelines for application processing. When I was reviewing again this morning, just looking through, I think we're about a year away from me being able to say that this is substantially complete for the timelines for processing. In addition to all of the changes to rules, we're working on updating policies. That is largely Heather Kelly's job and in the operations side of the house. But we're also creating a brand new, and many of you have heard about this as well, we're creating a new licensing system, a big IT project. Oh my gosh, are we at a $7 million appropriation? I think that we've been building this brand new portal. It's not just for receiving applications, it also serves as our system of record. It really is the IT infrastructure that undergirds the whole office. It is a massive project that we're working on. I'm hoping it should be just about a year that we will have all the boards live and in there. I'm speaking that into existence. There's a lot of variables. Anybody who knows if they've done an IT project of any size, that's very bold for me to state that. But I think I'll have my rules in a place. They're never going to be totally set because the laws are always going to change, right? This is just a fluid situation basically at all times. But I think we'll have a good sense of what the rules will have, the requirements set in a way that we can process them in an efficient way with a new system into the 21st century. And then I'll have a much better sense of the timeline, but it will be much more standardized as well.
Item 8.
Sorry, so 7 and 8 are quite connected, right? More licenses can be issued without full board review, and then all LADAC board applications need full board review. So on both of those, I've kind of already addressed that the office has the authority. I would just like to know that these, at any time, if a member of my staff looks at an application, looks at the requirements and says, I'm really not sure if this course that somebody reports is about alcohol and drug counseling actually is, right? The names vary. If there's any vagueness, we have the ability, and the board is very good to say, hey, board, can you take a look at this? Like, we're not LADAC, we're not counselors. Can you take a look and say, in your professional expertise, does this say what I think it says? Does this actually meet the requirements? And we do exercise that mechanism from time to time. The hope is that boards continue to make their rules even more clear, more standardized, and more objective to remove more of that need for review. And so the more specific they can be, the easier it is for us to review, the fewer that will need to be sent for that review. But we still can do that and do that on a regular basis as needed.
So do we still have problems? I know there were conflicting laws when it comes to who has the right to issue licenses. And have we cleaned all that up to say that some say the board has the right to issue and some say OPLC has the right and some say both agents, both the board and OPLC have the
Yes.
right? Have we cleaned, I know Carol McGuire and I worked on a bill to clean up a lot of that, but.
I think statutorily, putting a percentage is a scary thing. I think we're largely there, maybe 85% of the way there. And the way that we've been interpreting it is if a law it hasn't been changed since 2010, but we have RSA 310, which is pretty clear that the office is responsible for that. It's saying like that the more recent statute controls as we're catching up with some of that cleanup. We're largely there. And in terms of the issuing of licenses, I think that the vast majority of those conflicts have been eliminated. There's smaller, kind of one-off pieces. I honestly, as we dive into it and as we're looking and we open up all these chapters of rules, we're finding more pieces and questions either for clarification, for interpretation, things like under 541A, any approval granted by the office or the board would be considered a license. So which under 310 then is required to be of 2 years of duration. So we've identified some that are approvals but did not have an expiration date. So then saying, okay, to comply with 310, we need to have a 2-year date. So we're still interpreting a lot of things in that regard as we're finding them. So we're in a much better place than we are. House Bill 82 was the last big lift for cleanup this year when we didn't have any hundreds of pages of cleanup this year, which is very helpful. For all of you, no one really wants to read that much in our admin law, so.
Okay, I guess now we're ready for 8.
I think I've probably touched, like I said, 7 and 8. 1 was specific to kind of all of the boards at play, and then 8 was related just to the LADAC board. So I think I've covered those both. If you have specific LADAC questions, I'm happy to take that, or I'll just go to criminal history. Okay. Review information collected regarding applicants' criminal history. So we talked a fair bit actually about background checks when we were talking about potential delays. So we have universal rules in our PLC 300s and then 200s involving criminal background checks and board review that are compliant with the current statute. So 332G and then 31014. So we are ensuring that compliance. We made a few adjustments to make sure. One of the pieces, I believe, yes, in the summary of finding was ensuring that it's only convictions for crimes with a substantial and direct relationship are used to disqualify applications from licensure. I don't know if that's direct language from the statutes, but it's quite close. So it's a fairly high bar for what we can deny a license based on. And we've created a lot of objective procedures so that it's not somebody doesn't just look at a criminal history and say, wow, too bad, can't get a license because of X, Y, and Z, that there's real criteria there. We have a hearings process as well that provides the opportunity for somebody to come in and explain what's going on, either before the board or before a hearings officer. I'm feeling confident about the standardization and making sure that we're protecting the confidentiality of licensees, and then we're not preventing people from working who don't need to be, while ensuring public safety, of course. But there's a balance there.
Does the board have any questions on that? I guess we're ready to move on.
Okay. So number 10 is adopting rules for some licensing requirements and processes. This goes back to the endorsement as well. There was some fast tracking, and other boards had been working on this on a kind of an individual level to say, how can we get people more quickly through our process? When 31017, which is our endorsement, came through, that kind of took it over and said, okay, whatever you're doing, we're going to do that times 60. So that requirements in the process of moving that. So now we're kind of peeling through and saying, all right, we don't need these extra processes specific to the boards because we have one big office policy. So we're in the middle of that piece there.
And then, yes, Senator Ruth.
Thank you. So I've been hearing that the license for social work associate has been very slow in coming. Do we have that up and running yet?
I would have to double check for you. I know that the board has been working on rules. I also know there's a pending legislative change, again, that I believe has passed both bodies, that changes the requirement for the exam for that associate. The current statutory requirement is that they pass a nationally proctored exam. My understanding from the testimony in that legislation was nationally the pass rates have been lower. It's been quite challenged. It's a very challenging exam. So there, anecdotally, it seems that there might be a barrier in that regard that people might not be pursuing that as much. And I will have to double check. I can get back to you on the chapter if those rules are.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Do you have a question you'd like to? I have a question, if I could. When we talk about criminal background checks and other things, do we check to make sure that people are in this country illegally or legally, or that they citizenship or green card status? Or?
By statute, we are required to have Social Security or other tax ID in the application. So there are a variety of different IDs that can be used, but we do have to have that. So I would say we're not, it's not a question that I ask specifically, but we do have that requirement to collect that identification.
Thank you. I guess you can move on to the last few.
Okay. So now we're at number 11, my only, what we would say partially, so less than substantively resolved. And that's mostly due to the fact that we are, again, we've got statutes fairly consistent, rules are catching up, policies are next in our IT infrastructure. So in making sure that it's the same for everybody. So we have established universal timelines for the processing of applications. And we're in the middle of policy drafting right now. So again, you can read it there, but it's kind of the same conversation we've been having. We have limited staff, also in a hiring freeze, trying to create that standardization as much as possible. We are making good progress. I'm very happy with the trajectory. And I hope, I don't know how many times I'll have the privilege of being before this group, but maybe it'll be a year and I'll have a lot more progress to update on these initiatives. I'm happy to take any questions on that, but it's very similar. All right, the last one is review examination requirements. Happy to report both the Board of Psychology and the Board of Mental Health Practice have been hard at work specific to these exams. I think one of the concerns was the psychologist's jurisprudence exam. I'm looking at Heather, was essay questions, which is very subjective, hard to grade for anyone, let alone somebody with subject matter expertise. So they've been hard at work, probably for the better part of a year, making sure that they're getting the same substance, but being able to make it a multiple choice exam on the state laws and rules. So that criteria. So they're hard at work. I believe the exam is complete. Whether the rulemaking is finalized, I'm not sure where we are in the timeline, but I know that they have finished kind of their conversion from essay to multiple choice. The Board of Mental Health Practice, one of them, the pastoral psychotherapy exam, I know the board has had a bunch of conversations about because that was also an essay, maybe even an interview component to that piece. So they are aware and they're actively working on those.
Senator Pearl.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Director, I think you've done a pretty good job in answering the questions we had here. I know you've had a monumental task with all the changes we've thrown at you the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
You've been there a year and a half, 2 years now?
Oh, no, and I'm not even, September is when I started, so
Oh.
I'm 9 months here.
No, you're 9 months, that's right. Gosh, it's.
Just getting settled in.
Well, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you,
You're
sir.
making good progress on the thing, and I know that there is a lot we've thrown in your direction. We've worked very closely on a lot of issues in legislation. I will assure the board that the director has been reading through this, a lot of the statutes, and we've made some good cleanups this year. I believe they've passed both bodies now. I'm not certain either on the last one. But keep doing what you're doing with it. The social worker compact, has that Where are we on that? I don't think we talked about that specifically, did we?
Let me check. I know that they are having regular meetings. The director of licensing and board administration, has resigned effective last week. So the governor made a nomination before the executive council on Wednesday to fill that position. That person was sitting on the compact, was part of those initial meetings and the drafting. As you all know, I'm pretty sure all of you are somewhat familiar with compacts. Once it passes, if you're within the first 7 states, there's a lot of drafting and input that happens at that level before they're even fully enacted. We're somewhere in that process. I think they're pretty far along. I don't believe, Heather will double check, I don't believe I'm granting compact license currently. So we're not at that point yet, but they're making good progress. Yeah.
Well,
I
thank
can
you.
get a more detailed update for you on that.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I do have to run. I have another meeting that I'm supposed to be at 11 o'clock, so I'm going to take this opportunity to exit, but I just wanted to thank the director for her work. And I think this was a great review, and I hope we do more of it here at this level. So thank you.
Absolutely. We very much appreciate
Thank you.
you coming and updating us
Thank
on
you.
everything.
I-
And we do recognize that you have your hands full.
Thank you.
It's kind of like herding cats, I think, with as many boards as you have.
You guys are familiar with the dynamic over here in this side of the world, I think. If I could mention just briefly, I know that we have you have a color-coded list of audits dating back for progress reports. I know that we have a number that are in the red. I would like to note we are double counted because it has the office and the board. So whatever you see, cut it in half, and that's what I have. I just wanted to provide some clarity. So I should have led with this. I apologize. I met, except for the Board of Psychology, who did not meet between when I received the letter and the notice of the meeting. They have a meeting scheduled in July. So I spoke to the chair directly and then email corresponded with him. But I met with the other boards and said, we're providing this update. They have it, they reviewed it. And delegated me to come to represent them in the office. And then statutorily, the office is the one that's responsible for these audits. Obviously, the boards have a lot of responsibility. That's the reason that we're here before you. So I would follow the same suit for the other ones that we have dating back there. Heather here is one person who's responsible for my budget, also my other operations. So you can imagine how things are going right now. And then the audits there. And like I mentioned before, no excuses at all. We're in a hiring freeze. I'm short-staffed in my operations and my finance side, and in internal controls as well. I'm hoping to have reports to you by the end of the summer on the 5 pending audits that you have so that you'll get an update on all of those. So I wanted to mention that while I was here and just let you know, we'll be getting those to administrative services for publishing on the website, but I'll provide them as well to Mr. Henry so that you can see those.
Yeah, thank you for this. It's been great. And I know you've been dealing with a moving target.
Yeah.
You know, every year we seem to change your goal. But again, I think that's great. You're going to provide the letters. When you're providing the letters, if you give us some sort of estimate when you think the goal is going to be met or close to it, right? That may preclude us calling you in for another inquisition.
Yeah. I will say the more you audit us, the less we're working on the other audits. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
The last item in that packet is an update of some audits that Mr. Henry updated spreadsheet for us. And I don't know if there's any questions on the updated spreadsheet or any comments.
The question to the committee is, what do you want to do next? I think you just heard from OPLC that they recognize there's, I think, 4 of their audits for boards that I believe she said by the end of the summer, she plans to have written responses. So that's good, but there's 5 other audits in the red. I know 2 of them are for the Department of Corrections. I know there's some leadership changes over there, which may complicate things for a little while. It was funny, Department of Corrections, a few years ago, Commissioner Hanks actually contacted me and asked for what are all the audits that were done on corrections, because she wanted to make sure that they responded to everything. And last November, she actually sent this audit with all these responses. It was for an audit that I think was in 2002 on sexual harassment, like within the prison, which predates the requirement of any reporting, but they'd gone through the whole process of answering responding to all the observations, providing documentation of what they changed. And it looked like, what I thought was they were going to be moving through a number of other audits that had been done over the years. But again, I don't know what the status of that is now.
And I don't think any of us know at this point. It's a little early. Okay, Senator Langs.
Yeah, so again, I think OPLC is taken care of. Dee's gonna follow up with all the other audits that are on this list, especially in the red, with a written, requirement. I think we probably should hold off on Department of Corrections, considering they only have an interim head right now. And the ability, until that search is completed and they get settled in, we probably should hold off on anything with the Department of Corrections. So as I read this, that basically undoes everything in the red. There's no more anything in red. I don't think we can act, with the exception of police standards and training. And I'd almost say, because the executive director of commission, I'm not sure what he is, of police standards and training, is the guy who's running Department of Corrections right now. We probably shouldn't overburden him with a whole lot of work either, while he's trying to figure out what's going on in DOC. So I think we're down to the yellow. If we actually want to bring anybody in and have a conversation.
Well, there's actually, there's the Adult Parole Board, which is really, it's separate from the Department of Corrections. So that
Right, isn't it got a companion, because it says right underneath DOC as well?
there were some, but they're their own agency. I think they're like administratively supported by correction. Of course, there's a big connection in how it operates, but that is one agency that, we haven't heard from. That's a possibility. The other one is the Wetlands Council, which they've never responded to the wetlands audit. And then there's just like one observation for the Liquor Commission at the very top of the list. It was this audit we did on recycling, and there was just one specific little observation that was just for the Liquor Commission. And, the Liquor Commission just never, responded to that. It's not it's only one observation, but it could be an easy thing for them to do.
So, Mr. Chair, do we want to take those three items, the Liquor Commission on recycling, the Adult Parole Board itself, not the DOC component, and the wetlands, and send letters out to those three saying, give us an update. What's going on? Either update your response, because like I said, some of these they haven't even responded to. I'm looking at DES in 2019, had an audit with observations. They've done nothing and they've reported nothing. So DES is probably one I want to have come in and have it bring an update and chat with us to see where they are.
Agreed.
I certainly would agree with that. I think those are good choices.
The wetlands would be the top of my list too, based on the lack of response. It would be nice to follow up with the other two, but
It'll be in the fall, I'm sure, because we won't be meeting in July. So I think we need to plan that for September.
Okay, I can draft out the letter again for your review for the three. We could leave it vague sometime in September, and then we'll get back to them. That'll give them all summer to sort of hopefully get ready for you.
I think it's maybe a little early to actually set a date in September. I think we all want to see where we're going to be and what the layout is, but unless this room's available.
Yeah, it is. On Fridays, so we can meet here.
That would work good. So do we want to look at the,
Through Sonia, my aide, she's the one that manages this room.
we probably don't, I wouldn't think we'd want to do it too early in September with Labor Day and everything, but, let me look at the calendar here. Maybe like, the Friday mornings are usually pretty good. There's no conflicts, right? Excuse me?
I beg your pardon, the 12th would be particularly good for me because I'm away after that.
And my daughter's getting married that weekend, so I won't be here either. I won't be on the 12th.
Okay, well, I can always prevail upon Representative Ebel to, or we can do it another time.
Can we just stick to the first Friday of the month?
The first
We probably
Friday is going to
could
be
do it on the-
problematical
we
that month.
probably
I'm
could do it
already
on
double
the 5th.
booked.
Yeah,
No, sixth.
we probably could do it on the 5th.
Six would be.
6th is Saturday.
Yeah,
House Democrats have a retreat that day.
excuse me?
House Democrats have a retreat on the 5th. That's an all-day retreat,
What time?
all day,
Okay.
as far as I know. I will check and let you know if it is less than that, but I think it was planned as an all-day event.
So when is Labor Day? And
Well, do you want to
Monday,
make
the
it?
first Monday.
You can't make
Okay.
it the 12th.
I'll
I
verify
can do the
that
4th.
because Representative
the
Email says she thinks it's the 4th, so.
How about the
That
4th?
would be fine.
Thursday the 4th? Will that work for you?
Sorry?
Would Thursday the 4th work for you?
Well, what Representative Ebel just said was she thinks that our retreat is actually on the 4th and not on the 5th, and that would leave the 5th open. Are you texting the office to check? Okay, great. So we'll have an answer on that in a minute. If our retreat's the 4th, then the 5th is clear.
So the 5th's open?
We're finding out.
Maybe.
Okay.
a conflict in our calendars.
Mr. Chair, one other thing. If we can add one more item, the agency doesn't even exist anymore, DREAD. But maybe we can take the first item in the yellow as well. They haven't responded since 2017. They're 89% of the fully addressed, so there's not a lot of items left for them. Maybe whichever, whether it went over to BEA or DNCR, wherever this Office of Workforce Opportunity ended up, maybe we can send them a letter as well and just, maybe they can give us an update on where they are.
Yeah,
It's
I
been
was-
since 2017 since they've responded. Most of the other ones have got 2024 or 25 in them, but that one goes back a while.
We have a winner. Our retreat is the 4th, so the 5th is open.
Okay, so why don't we tentatively plan it for the 5th then? And, if we have to change it, we'll change it, but,
I have a question for Henry.
yes.
So, Mr. Henry J., so we heard from OPLC, and a lot of their stuff is either in progress or still a moving target, right? They're not going to probably have I'm 100% done. They're never going to probably get there at the rate we keep changing statutes. And so the question is, at what point do we take them off our list and say, this is like, I think Dee's, everything she can do, she is doing to achieve the goal. But like the military reciprocity is probably going to be a 3-year process for every single MOS and every single license in the state of New Hampshire to validate that. Do we literally leave it on there even though we know we've made substantial progress and everything's done? Do we just stay on the list forever until we get to 100%?
I would vote for having them finish up the boards that they're going to report on. But as you said, not only are we changing things as time goes on, but every jurisdiction in every state changes also. So I think if we got through those boards that we had on our list, I would be very comfortable leaving them off at that point because it is a moving target and maybe they could come in and chat with us occasionally just to give us an update.
Well,
But
it doesn't look like they're non-compliant, right? Because I think that they probably are compliant to the audit, responsive to the audit, but they'll never get to 100%. So how do we get there?
Well, again, this list is your list, so you can do what you want with it. They were in the red because there was no response. And now you're forcing everyone to respond, which is a good thing. And then you get down, oh, are they yellow or green? But like you're saying, they could be yellow for a long time because, oh, there's one observation that maybe we said, oh, they need a new system, but they're not going to get money for the new system. It sort of stays out there. And whether you want to bring them in because of that, or you decide that's enough. I mean, it's up to you how you want to use the list. Yeah.
So you'll make arrangements for this room?
I'll talk to Sean.
10 o'clock. Is there any other business? Seeing none, I guess we're done. We can adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.